Romance is mandatory. She smirked. The alien queen didn't wait for consent. Captain Jake. Morrison had expected many things when he volunteered for the first human-alien cultural exchange program. He expected strange foods, difficult languages, and maybe some awkward diplomatic moments. What he didn't expect was standing face to face with the most stunning creature he'd ever seen, who looked at him like he was her personal entertainment. Princess Zara of the Nexarian Empire stood 7 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like liquid silver under the alien sun. Her eyes were the color of deep space, flecked with tiny stars that seemed to actually twinkle. When she smiled, it was predatory and amused, like she knew secrets about the universe that no one else did. "So you're my human," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made his chest vibrate. How delightfully primitive. Jake straightened his shoulders, trying to match her confidence, even though he felt completely out of his depth. "Captain Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Corps. I'm here to serve as cultural liaison and learn about your people's customs." She circled him slowly, her long silver hair flowing behind her like liquid mercury. Each step was graceful, calculated, powerful. "Oh, you'll learn our customs," she purred, starting with the most important one. "Romance is mandatory in my household." Jake's throat went dry. "Excuse me?" "You heard correctly, little human." She stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could smell her scent, something like starlight and exotic flowers. "I am Princess Zara, heir to the Nexarian throne, and you have been assigned to me personally. In our culture, all who serve in my inner circle must participate in romantic rituals." The briefing packet back on Earth had mentioned nothing about this. Jake's mind raced through his training, searching for any reference to romantic obligations. There had been warnings about alien customs being different, but this seemed extreme, even by those standards. "With respect, Your Highness, I think there might be some misunderstanding. My orders were to observe and assist with diplomatic relations, not to romance a princess." Her laugh was like music, but there was an edge to it that made Jake's pulse quicken. "How very human of you to think you have a choice in the matter." She gestured broadly at the crystal palace around them, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that matched her heartbeat. "This is my domain, Captain Morrison. Here my word is law, and I have decided that you will court me according to Nexarian tradition." Jake felt heat creeping up his neck. "But we're from different species. Surely there are protocols." "Protocols?" Zara stepped closer, her hand reaching out to trace the edge of his uniform collar. Her touch sent an electric shock through his system. "The only protocol you need to understand is this. I am used to getting what I want, and right now I want to see what makes humans tick." Her finger trailed down to rest over his heart, which was hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. "How fascinating. Your cardiovascular system responds so dramatically to simple contact. This will be even more entertaining than I anticipated." Jake tried to step back, but found himself pressed against a pillar of living crystal that had somehow moved behind him. The palace itself seemed to be helping her corner him. "I don't understand what you want from me," he managed to say. Zara's smile widened, showing teeth that were perfectly white and slightly pointed. "I want everything, Captain. Your culture speaks of romance as something gentle, consensual, patient." How boring. In Nexarian tradition, romance is conquest. It's fire and passion, and claiming what calls to your soul. She leaned in close, her lips almost brushing his ear. "And you, brave little human who traveled across the galaxy to learn about us, call to mine." Jake's world tilted. This wasn't what he'd signed up for, but as he looked into those star-filled eyes, he realized that maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what he'd been searching for without knowing it. The adventure was just beginning. And Jake Morrison was about to discover that sometimes the most unexpected assignments led to the most extraordinary destinations. The next morning, Jake woke up in quarters that were more luxurious than anything he'd ever experienced. The bed seemed to adjust to his body temperature. The walls displayed soothing patterns of light, and somewhere soft music played that perfectly matched his brainwaves. It should have been relaxing, but instead, he felt like he was being studied by invisible eyes. A soft chime announced someone's arrival, and Jake scrambled to make himself presentable. He expected a servant or maybe a protocol officer. Instead, Princess Zara glided into his room, wearing a flowing garment that looked like it was woven from captured moonlight. "Good morning, my reluctant courtier," she said, settling gracefully onto a chair that materialized from the floor to catch her. "I trust you slept well in accommodations befitting your new status." Jake rubbed his eyes, still trying to process the situation. "About that, Your Highness, I think we need to clarify exactly what you expect from me. My mission parameters have changed." She waved a hand dismissively, and a holographic display appeared showing official documents bearing both Earth and Nexarian seals. "I contacted your superiors during the night cycle. They were quite eager to accommodate my requests when I explained how important this cultural exchange could be for future relations between our species." Jake stared at the documents, recognizing his commanding officer's digital signature at the bottom. They actually approved this? They practically insisted upon it. Zara's smile was triumphant. "It seems your Earth government is very interested in securing a favorable trade agreement with the Nexarian Empire. And I am very interested in understanding what makes humans so resilient." She stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the sprawling alien cityscape beyond. "Your people fascinate me, Jake Morrison. You're small, fragile, short-lived creatures, yet you've managed to reach the stars. You have no natural weapons, no psychic abilities, no extended lifespans, and yet you never give up. Why?" Jake joined her at the window, careful to maintain some distance. "I guess we just don't know when to quit." "Precisely." She turned to him, her expression suddenly serious. "In all my years studying other species, humans are the only ones who consistently surprise me. You should have been extinct 1,000 times over, but instead, you're here, reaching across the galaxy to make friends with beings who could destroy your entire planet with a thought. Is that a threat? It's an observation." She reached out and touched his arm, her skin warm despite its metallic appearance. "And it's why I chose you specifically for this experiment." Jake felt that familiar electric sensation at her touch. "What kind of experiment?" Zara's smile returned, but this time it held something deeper than mere amusement. "I want to understand what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Humans never surrender, never accept defeat. But Nexarians always get what we desire. What happens when those two traits collide?" She moved closer, her presence overwhelming his senses. "In 3 days, there will be a formal ceremony binding you to my household. According to our laws, once that ceremony is complete, you will be mine in every sense that matters." "Your government has already agreed." Jake's heart sank. "And if I refuse? Then you'll be returned to Earth in disgrace, your mission a failure, and the potential alliance between our peoples will crumble." Her voice was gentle, but the implications were clear. "But I don't think you'll refuse, Jake Morrison." "Why not?" She reached up and cupped his face in her hands, her star-filled eyes searching his. "Because despite your protests, despite your fear, despite everything logical telling you to run, you're curious about me too. You want to know what it would be like to be claimed by someone who sees your true worth." Jake tried to deny it, but the words caught in his throat. She was right, and they both knew it. "The ceremony is in 3 days," she repeated, stepping back. "Use that time to prepare yourself, or to flee if you can." But know this, brave human, I have never wanted anything as much as I want to understand you. And Nexarians are very good at getting what we want. As she glided toward the exit, Jake found his voice. What if I said I wanted to understand you? Too? She paused at the doorway, looking back with an expression that was suddenly vulnerable. Then perhaps we'll both get more than we bargained for. The 3 days passed in a blur of cultural lessons, formal preparations, and stolen moments of conversation that left Jake more confused than ever. Princess Zara was nothing like what he'd expected from an alien royal. She was brilliant, yes, and commanding, but she was also surprisingly thoughtful, asking questions about human art, music, and philosophy that showed a genuine curiosity about his species. The ceremony itself was unlike anything in human experience. The great hall of the Nexarian palace had been transformed into something that looked like the inside of a nebula, with flowing colors and light that seemed to move with its own consciousness. Hundreds of Nexarian nobles filled the space, their silver skin gleaming and their star-filled eyes fixed on the unusual proceedings. Jake stood at the center of it all, wearing ceremonial robes that felt alien against his skin, but somehow fit perfectly. Beside him, Princess Zara looked radiant in garments that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, her hair flowing around her like a living aurora. "Are you ready for this, Jake Morrison of Earth?" she asked quietly, her voice barely audible above. The harmonic chanting of the assembled crowd. Jake looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that somewhere in the past 3 days, his fear had transformed into something else entirely. "I think so. But I still don't fully understand what this means." "It means," she said, taking his hands in hers, "that from this moment forward, we are bound together. Not as master and servant, not as captor and prisoner, but as something unprecedented in Nexarian history, equals who chose each other." Ceremony proceeded with rituals that were beautiful and strange. They shared water from both their worlds, exchanged vows in languages neither fully understood, and allowed their life forces to be temporarily linked by ancient Nexarian technology. That showed every person in the room a genuine connection forming between them. When it was over, Jake felt different. Not changed exactly, but aware of Zara in a way that went beyond the physical. He could sense her emotions, her thoughts, even her heartbeat syncing with his own. "How do you feel?" she asked as they walked through gardens filled with flowers that bloomed in response to their presence. "Like I jumped off a cliff and discovered I could fly," Jake admitted, terrified and exhilarated at the same time. Zara laughed, the sound pure joy. "That's exactly how romance should feel. Not the gentle, safe courtship your species prefers, but something wild and transformative." They stopped beside a fountain that played music instead of water, the notes shifting to match their combined emotional state. "Jake, I need you to understand something. I didn't choose you just because I was curious about humans. I chose you because from the moment I saw you, I felt something I'd never experienced before." "What was that?" "Recognition." She turned, too. Face him fully, her expression open and honest. "Like I'd been waiting my whole life for someone I'd never met. Someone who could stand toe-to-toe with me, not through force or power, but through simple, stubborn humanity." Jake reached out and took her hand, marveling at how right it felt. "I was terrified of you at first. And now?" He considered the question. "Seriously, now I think I'm falling in love with you, which should be impossible, but humans have never been good at accepting impossible." Zara's smile was radiant. "And Nexarians have never been good at settling for anything less than everything we desire. It seems we're perfectly matched in our refusal to accept limitations." As they stood there in the alien garden, surrounded by impossible beauty and bound together by forces neither fully understood, Jake realized that sometimes the best adventures began not with careful planning, but with the courage to say yes to the unknown, The ceremony was complete, but their real journey was just beginning. The weeks following their binding ceremony brought challenges neither Jake nor Zara had anticipated. News of their unprecedented union had spread throughout both the Nexarian Empire and human space, creating political ripples that threatened to become tsunamis. Jake sat in Zara's private study, reading reports from Earth that ranged from fascinated to furious. Some hailed him as a pioneer in interspecies relations, while others accused him of betraying human independence by submitting to alien authority. "They don't understand," he said, looking up from the holographic displays. "They think you somehow coerced me into this." Zara moved gracefully around the room, her agitation visible in the way the bioluminescent plants responded to her emotional state. "My own people aren't much better. The Nexarian High Council is demanding explanations for why I bound myself to what they call a primitive species. Some are suggesting the ceremony should be annulled. Can they do that? They can try." Her voice carried a dangerous edge. "But they would find that both my will and Nexarian law are stronger than their prejudices." Jake set aside the reports and studied her carefully. In the time they'd been together, he'd learned to read the subtle signs of her moods. Right now, she was furious, but also worried about something deeper. "There's more to this than political pressure, isn't there?" Zara paused in her pacing, her star-filled eyes meeting his. "You're learning to read me too well, Jake Morrison. That's what happens when two people are actually bound together. So what aren't you telling me?" She settled into the chair across from him, suddenly looking vulnerable, despite her imposing presence. "There's something about the ceremony that I didn't fully explain. The binding between us, it's not just symbolic or emotional. It's created a real psychic connection." Jake had suspected as much. He'd been experiencing moments where he could sense her thoughts, feel her emotions as if they were his own. I figured something like that was happening. Why is that a problem? Because in Nexarian history, such deep bindings have only occurred between members of our own species. The connection grows stronger over time, eventually becoming so complete that the two individuals essentially become one consciousness in two bodies. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "And you don't know what will happen when one of those bodies is human?" "Exactly." Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. "Our scientists are fascinated, but they're also concerned. Human neural patterns are so different from ours. The binding might stabilize into something beautiful, or it might drive us both insane." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling between them. Jake could feel Zara's fear through their connection, but also her determination to see this through regardless of the risks. "How long do we have before we know for sure?" "The process typically completes within one of your Earth years. After that, ... She shrugged, trying to appear casual but failing completely. Jake stood and moved to her chair, kneeling beside it so they were at eye level. "Zara, look at me. Are you regretting this?" Her response was immediate and fierce. "Never. Even if I knew for certain it would destroy us both, I would choose you again. Then we face whatever comes together." Jake took her hands in his, feeling the now familiar electric connection between them. "Besides, you said it yourself, humans don't know when to quit. If anyone can survive an impossible psychic binding, it's probably us." Zara's smile was brilliant. "And Nexarians have never met a challenge we couldn't overcome through sheer force of will. So we're either going to create something unprecedented in galactic history, or we're going to fail spectacularly trying. Those are the only two options I ever consider acceptable." Zara agreed. Over the following days, they threw themselves into understanding their connection. They worked with Nexarian scientists who were eager to study the phenomenon, underwent tests that mapped their neural patterns, and practiced exercises designed to help them maintain their individual identities while embracing their growing unity. Jake discovered that he was developing abilities he'd never had before: enhanced intuition, the ability to sense emotions in others, even brief flashes of precognitive insight. Zara, meanwhile, found herself experiencing human concepts like humor and spontaneity in ways that transformed her understanding of existence. "We're changing each other," she observed one evening as they watched alien stars wheel overhead. "Is that bad?" "It's unprecedented," she replied. "But then, so are we." Jake squeezed her hand, feeling the pulse of their shared heartbeat through their bond. "Well, humans have always been good at making the impossible possible, and Nexarians have always been good at rewriting the rules of reality itself." Together, they were becoming something entirely new. 1 year after their binding ceremony, Jake, Morrison, and Princess Zara stood before a joint assembly of human and Nexarian representatives, their hands clasped and their minds more perfectly united than anyone had thought possible. The dire predictions of madness and destruction had proven false. Instead, they had become something remarkable: two individuals who shared consciousness while maintaining their unique perspectives. "The transformation is complete," announced Dr. Vex, the lead Nexarian scientist who had been monitoring their progress. "What we're seeing is unprecedented in our records. Rather than one consciousness consuming the other, they have achieved perfect symbiosis." Jake could feel Zara's thoughts flowing alongside his own, her alien perspective enriching his understanding of everything around them. Through their bond, he experienced the universe as Nexarians did: vast, interconnected, alive with possibilities. At the same time, Zara gained access to human qualities she'd never possessed: adaptability, optimism, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. "The political implications are staggering," said Admiral Foster, Jake's former commanding officer, who had arrived from Earth specifically for this evaluation. "You're essentially proving that true unity between our species is possible." "More than that," Zara interjected, her voice carrying new harmonics that resonated with both human and Nexarian hearing ranges. "We've discovered that the barriers between species aren't as absolute as we believed. Consciousness, it turns out, is more flexible than anyone imagined." Jake nodded, feeling her thoughts merge seamlessly with his own words. "We're not just human and Nexarian anymore. We're something new, a bridge between worlds, living proof that connection transcends biology." The assembly buzzed with excitement and concern in equal measure. Representatives from both governments had come prepared for various outcomes, but success on this scale presented challenges they weren't ready for. "What do you intend to do with this evolution?" asked Counselor Wrath, one of the more conservative Nexarian leaders. Jake and Zara exchanged a look that contained entire conversations. Through their bond, they had spent months discussing this very question, exploring possibilities that neither could have conceived alone. "We want to establish a new kind of diplomatic corps," Jake announced. "Volunteers from both species who are willing to undergo the binding process and serve as permanent liaisons." "It's dangerous," Zara added, her honesty cutting through political niceties. "Not every pairing will be successful. Some might fail catastrophically. But for those that succeed, we could create understanding between species that goes beyond words or treaties." Admiral Foster leaned forward. "You're talking about fundamentally changing what it means to be human." "And what it means to be Nexarian," Counselor Wrath added, sounding troubled. Jake felt Zara's amusement through their bond and couldn't help but smile. "With respect, sir, humans have been changing what it means to be human since we first picked up tools. We've never been a species that accepts limitations. And Nexarians have always believed in transcending the boundaries of possibility," Zara continued. "This is simply the next step in that evolution." Dr. Vex spoke up from her position at the monitoring station. "The data supports their proposal. The neural patterns we're observing show enhanced creativity, improved problem-solving abilities, and emotional stability that exceeds either species' baseline. They're not losing their humanity or their Nexarian nature. They're adding to both. The debate continued for hours, with representatives from both sides expressing concerns about identity, autonomy, and the fundamental nature of their species. Jake and Zara listened patiently, their shared consciousness allowing them to understand every perspective with perfect clarity. Finally, as the formal session drew to a close, Jake stood to address the assembly one final time. "I know this is frightening," he began, his voice carrying the confidence that came from absolute certainty. "Change always is. But a year ago, I was just another human trying to understand an alien princess who seemed determined to claim me as her own. And I was an Exerian royal, convinced that conquest was the only path to true connection," Zara added, rising beside him. "We were both wrong, and we were both right. Wrong because real unity can't be forced or demanded," Jake continued. "Right because some connections are worth fighting for, even when they seem impossible," Zara finished. They turned to face each other, their movements perfectly synchronized without conscious effort. "We're not asking anyone to follow our path," Jake said, though his eyes remained locked on Zara's. "We're just proving that the path exists. And that sometimes," Zara whispered, her voice carrying to every corner of the room through their shared psychic resonance, "the most extraordinary adventures begin with the simple courage to say yes to love." As the assembly watched in awed silence, Jake and Zara's consciousness flowed together in perfect harmony, creating a moment of connection so profound that even the most skeptical representatives felt a glimpse of what they had achieved. The future stretched before them, vast and full of possibilities neither species had dared imagine. And at the center of it all stood a human captain and an alien princess who had discovered that love, it turned out, was indeed mandatory, not because anyone demanded it, but because some connections were too powerful to deny. Their story was just beginning, and the universe would never be the same.